I just thought that might be a little helpful to see how they handle the ordinances.
Are you talking about the one?
The marijuana.
Yeah, my sister-in-law's a city council member in Needles, California.
Oh, yeah?
They just implemented it a few years ago.
In Needles?
Mm-hmm. It's like 2 minutes from
I know.
Nevada.
I know. Last time I was there was 114.
That's what I remember about it when I was a kid.
Yeah, last time I was
I
in
remember
Vegas,
it
it
was
was about
really, really
115.
hot. I always remember Needles, California.
Needles is hotter than
Yeah.
Vegas.
Oh, yeah.
I hope so. We'll be there in 2 weeks. So
Oh, it's-
I hope so.
It's plenty hot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure is.
Actually, this time
That
it
is
was pretty
the
nice
desert.
there.
I was in my old 68 and it was 114 degrees and it didn't like it.
Yeah, I gotta be,
We were in a 63 Comet without
Were
air
you?
conditioning. That was in the 60s. So
I
yeah,
gotta be in Vegas
we had
June
no air conditioning.
23rd. June 23rd through the 27th, I think, I'll be in
I
Vegas.
was telling them I got
And
a
I'm
call
like,
from
guys,
Colorado Springs.
who scheduled
The
this
city hall
one?
there
Yeah.
wanted to
The
know
only good
if
thing is
agenda
the
items
hotel we're
marijuana.
the hotel we're staying at is the same hotel the bowling
So,
alley's in.
we're in the
So I
news,
should
I
never
guess.
have to step outside.
Yeah.
So,
That'd be good.
yeah. But the nice thing in Vegas is once the sun goes down, the temperature drops.
Yeah,
You know.
it does. Yeah,
Not a bad place for Christmas, though. It's like
I
65.
Oh, really? Yeah. I mean,
I
I could
think
take a
my,
little heat
uh,
right now. It'd be all right.
yeah. My comment the last time I was there was something like, if the Lord was gonna give the earth an enema, Needles, California would be the site.
My comments were different. They were, wow, look at your roads.
Yeah. Yeah, we made a detour to the London Bridge after we left Needles. Yeah, it was, that was our old Route 66 trip where we took the old cars on the old route.
Yeah. Yeah, for having absolutely nothing in the town, they have really nice roads and sidewalks
Yeah.
and all of that, but
Yep.
Tana said that's fairly new, based
Yeah.
on new legislation, new tax dollars.
Right, right. Bullhead City is kind of a study out in municipalities. Retirement community that grew up just exploded.
Yeah.
And the way that they've handled it, I think, is pretty progressive. They even took the effluent water off of their sewage treatment plants. And
Gabe,
they
you've talked
do,
to Gabe about
yeah,
that.
they do
He did
irrigation with
Yeah,
that.
he did that plan out.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Okay, let's get started.
Jacobs,
Here.
Lund,
Here.
Watts.
Here.
Allen, Johnston.
Here. Approval of the minutes?
Move to approve.
Jacobs,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Watts.
Yes.
Johnston.
Yes. Adoption of the agenda?
Move to adopt?
Jacobs,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Watts.
Yes.
Johnston.
Yes. Now we're going to open a public hearing on an ordinance amending Chapter 27 of the Code of City Ordinances of the City of Warrensburg, Missouri regarding marijuana-related uses.
Madam Mayor and City Council, on November 6th, the voters in Missouri, as well as the voters here in Warrensburg, passed a medical marijuana amendment to the state's constitution at a 67% in favor margin. And so with that becoming the new state law soon, the city has staff's brought forward an ordinance that would amend your zoning ordinance to allow the same facilities as newly defined in the state's codes to be allowed here in the city of Warrensburg. There's 4 types of facilities that are covered by that phrase, marijuana-related uses, and you can see those spelled out in the ordinance. They mirror the text and language of the state Amendment 2. The first of those is medical marijuana dispensary facilities. The second would be medical marijuana cultivation facilities, whether that was an indoor, an outdoor, or a combination of the two. Medical marijuana infused products manufacturing facility, and medical marijuana testing facility. So each of those terms has been defined in Chapter 27 now, and an associated parking requirement, as well as what zoning districts that's allowed to be in. There are some location restrictions set forth at the very end of the ordinance. The first of those that's listed, there's 3 called out there, And then the fourth is how to measure. The first is the 1,000 feet from any school, child, daycare center, church, public library, or public park. That language is largely taken from the state's language. And then the other two, the 500 feet of a residentially zoned district or any establishment licensed under Chapter 2 or 3 of the Code of Ordinances, or 500 feet from another marijuana-related use, are the restrictions that we have locally added on top of what the state has set forth. So for the most part, we've treated, in terms of the location, zoning districts, and parking requirements, we've treated it very similar to other pharmacies or production facilities as any other licensed drug would be in the city. Be happy to answer any questions. Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval at their meeting last week. As noted in the staff report, they also voted to recommend that the council discuss and consider putting a cap on the number of licenses allowed for each type of the 4 facilities. The state's language does set a cap for 3 of those types of facilities and states that it could be no less than, and then gives some requirements at the state and the congressional district levels.
Since we don't have anybody signed up on the hearing, do I need to close the hearing before we read, or before we discuss? Okay. Okay, so there's nobody signed up, so we will close the public hearing at this time and move on to first and second reading of an ordinance amending Chapter 27 of the Code of City Ordinances of the City of Warrensburg, Missouri regarding marijuana-related uses.
Anticipating some discussion, there's a few options for the council. There is no time requirement requiring this be done first and second reading this evening. So depending on council discussion, if you would like to direct staff to make some changes, you could do one of 2 things. You can either table it until the next meeting for first and second reading, or you could just do first reading tonight and then we can bring it back with the changes you can amend and then do your other reading. But just for point of order on that.
I mean, as in the conversations I had earlier today with you guys, I mean, one of the things I definitely would like to see is something that shows me, you know, with this restrictions, where will this fit in Warrensburg? Because just sitting on Google Map playing around, drawing 1,000 feet lines, 500 feet lines, I'm not seeing with the liquor restrictions in here also, I'm not seeing anywhere how it fits in Warrensburg, you know, inside the city limits of Warrensburg.
We'll say from a staff perspective, given the results of the election, our goal was to be fairly as unrestricted as possible with this ordinance. So as Barb mentioned earlier, the one restriction as far as 1,000 feet from any church, etc., that is a state requirement. There's not a whole lot we can do to change that. The other 2, however, are open to debate for the council what you would like to do. I don't know that staff has a strong opinion one way or the other on either of those. With regards to the alcohol issue, we discussed that with Councilmember Jacobs earlier today. There are a few alternatives there that you could do. We could mirror the same language that's already in our restrictions for alcohol related licenses, which I believe is 100. Is it 100 foot?
Are they 100 feet from each? I thought they were just 100 feet from other.
I think it was just 100 feet.
I thought it was 100 feet from churches, anything like that.
Yeah, I don't think it's 100 feet from each other. It's just 100 feet from churches.
So you could mirror that as well. You could, I guess, potentially establish certain areas where there's a lower threshold. And another option, which I would probably recommend, is you only put that restriction in place for businesses that sell liquor by the drink and not by the package.
Right.
Would be another option as well. I do have some concern about locating some of these facilities where there's readily available access of alcohol and marijuana in near proximity, which is why staff would encourage at least some separation. But I think staff is supportive of whatever the council would like to do with that. This was passed by a a fairly good majority of the voters within our city limits, and so staff didn't want to try and go against that. And we also felt if they were going to allow it, then perhaps we should put Warrensburg in the best position possible to benefit economically from it as well. So that was kind of the goals and the intents of staff. So if we inadvertently put something in there that makes it seem
Right.
it's impossible to happen, that was unintentional.
Right, no, and I'm not saying anybody did it intentionally, I'm just, when I started drawing lines, I was like, does this fit?
Yeah.
You know?
What, have we had the opportunity to collect from other municipalities that are impacted from Colorado or California, back east where medical marijuana has been approved? I'd be interested to see how those municipalities handled it.
Thought we had one from Colorado, but I don't have it at my fingertips.
Okay.
I mean, I did get an opportunity to talk to, which was kind of strange, but I did get an opportunity to talk to my oldest daughter, who is authorized to have medical marijuana in California. And she said she goes to a location, shows her card, and what's from reading what the state is attempting to do, that appears to be what the state of Missouri is attempting to do in the amendment. And then I also talked to my uncle who lives in Vegas, and he said basically he orders it online,
Right.
and then a unmarked vehicle comes to his house and delivers it. So
That's in Vegas.
in Vegas, right? So
Okay.
yeah.
So what are the restrictions on pharmacies? Because despite the perception, at this point, medical use has been voted in.
Right.
And so I would, in my mind, I guess I categorize it more like pharmacy rather than recreational,
Yeah, I think,
anything else.
what was it, item
Like
3?
what are our requirements on
Yeah,
pharmacies,
so-
or how does it compare to a pharmacy, what the state has said?
So how does the ordinance as written compare to the restrictions a pharmacy may have? So I understand the state regulation and we can't change that, but when it comes to being located next to places that sell alcohol,
We tried to mirror it,
So
pretty
you're,
much the same.
as far as what zoning districts they can be in, they are the exact same, and the parking requirement is the same. A retail pharmacy does not have the location restrictions either at the state level or the local level that this has.
okay.
So really the only difference between what we propose to you versus what's allowed currently for pharmacies would be those restrictions of distance from alcohol establishment, schools, parks, those types of things. Other than that, it's allowed in all the same zones that a pharmacy would be, with the exception of,
Residential restrictions?
no, I was thinking of the manufacturer element. I don't think we have pharmacies in the manufacturer, but we had to.
The manufacturing facilities, I think, are treated the same. The cultivation facility is treated differently in that we've required if there is outdoor cultivation, a conditional use permit, as there could be additional fencing or security and safety requirements you'd like to see with outdoor growing that you would not see with indoor. If it was an entirely indoor facility, then it's treated the same as other agricultural uses.
And as far as the outdoor piece of it goes, I mean, reading what the amendment says for security purposes, I mean, you'd almost have to have a prison.
They look like prisons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, we had the security issue, but we also had odor issues that we wanted to make sure we had the
Right.
ability to regulate also with regards to that.
I'm personally more concerned of the distribution systems being allowed to be in the city limits of Warrensburg than the other items. I would prefer to see them to be more restrictive and be moved out into the county or wherever, because I don't see any of those. I don't see a huge benefit for any of those to being in Warrensburg, but on the other side, the distribution piece of it, think
The dispensaries.
the dispensaries, correct. I think there is an advantage for Warrensburg at least being on the table to have one.
Well, as the code's written now, under certain parameters, the manufacturing and growing facilities would be allowed inside city limits. As it's
Correct.
currently written.
Right.
Right.
Which is a much greater benefit when you own your own utilities. So without,
Well, we get the advantage of the franchise fees,
sure,
electric and water usage,
yeah.
the job creation.
Yep. But we don't yet know what the state, the final, word from the state's gonna be.
Well, you don't know the exact, what the application forms will look
Right.
like, how they will be processed, those types of things, but there are time restrictions on the state that you,
Right.
you know, there's a 180-day clock running, there's 245-day clock, I
Right.
think, running for them to issue their first license, so,
Right.
they, as far as promulgating rules, they will need to do that quickly.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah, so I think my concern would be with the number 2 where, there is a restriction of 500 feet. I know I talked to Brian earlier and you said chapter 2 and 3 would be
Right.
those places that serve, or that have alcohol sales.
Chapter 3 deals with all alcohol licenses. Chapter 2 is included, because we have chapter 2.5, which includes adult entertainment
Yeah.
pieces.
So I think at this point, for me, I wanna look at it very strictly as medical use, because that's all at this point that we're dealing with.
But
And-
if we were to change, or look at the possibility anyway of changing, the chapter 3 reference to liquor by the drink, you know, then you're opening up a lot more real estate, I think.
Sure.
The only thing that I would put on the table is if this does evolve in the same way that it has in other states, you will have these facilities present, and if it does become open for recreational use at some point in
Right.
the future, and these exist without these restrictions, then you will have non-conforming grandfathered uses at that
Mhm.
point.
Okay.
Meaning, okay, meaning that it would have the same,
We should kind of.
Meaning if you don't
Liberties.
have these types of restrictions, then if it becomes lawful for
Yeah.
recreational use, then if that facility exists without these regulations having been put in place now,
yeah.
it would not apply to those existing
Mhm.
facilities
Right.
at that point in time.
Well, I think with the number of churches we have downtown and the 1,000 feet line, I think you're almost taking Pine Street and Holden Street off the table anyways, it's 1,000 foot. You know, with that 1,000 foot piece there, I mean, as far as restricting it for drink purposes, I mean, that would at least open up some of the strip malls we have out here and stuff, because that's where I visualize some of these locations wanting to go, cause they'll want a
Right.
2,000, 3,000 square foot location, you know, to set up and be able to operate in. You know, and right now, I know that, right now, I couldn't find a strip mall that with the ordinance, the way it's currently written, would be eligible for that purpose.
It'll still be fairly restrictive with alcohol by the drink.
Could we get, I understand that the GIS doesn't currently allow to draw circles around liquor licensed
But
facilities.
we don't have the current liquor license holders as points on any,
Okay,
on this system, so
Okay.
we would have to establish those points. But then we can easily draw a buffer around them, yes.
okay. And when could we anticipate maybe having that technology available?
But we can try for your January meeting.
I guess that's what I would recommend.
Are there 2 different types of liquor licenses then? The ones that allow you to serve alcohol and the ones that allow you to sell alcohol?
Yes.
I don't mean to complicate your job, but would it be possible to separate those 2 so that we could see if the ordinance were to be written in a particular way, what that would look like?
Well, we've gotta go in and create the layer anyway, so I assume going and creating the layer, we can create
The
that however
variation.
you'd like to see it.
I just think that'd be beneficial to see.
That's exactly right. I mean, I tried to do it at home and I couldn't find anything
Yeah,
I unfortunately couldn't find anything besides my real estate maps that I could draw 500 feet circles, but
I'm
it was
I'm
not
just
that
really
big, so.
really having heard what the counselor said, really concerned that we don't find ourselves in a trap down the road
Right.
for future councils.
I mean,
Are there other distances besides 500 feet you'd like me to model?
Not,
Did someone say there was somewhere that allows the 100 feet?
That's for liquor.
Our
That's
current alcohol.
right.
That would be alcohol to alcohol.
Right.
That would be alcohol to church.
Oh,
Our current
but this is
ordinance
1,000.
Our current ordinance doesn't allow you to distribute or sell alcohol within 100 feet of a church. So it's tied to
Oh,
our
gotcha.
alcohol.
We're already
license
drawing that out
chapter.
at the state level,
Yep.
so that.
Right, but the state's
we
gonna
don't need
the
that.
state's gonna mandate 1,000, so there's
Right.
no
No, you
reason to
can't
mess
change
with
the
that.
1,000 for a
Right.
church right now, cause the state has
Right.
mandated all the voters of Missouri
Right.
put that into place.
Right.
Got it.
But you can change the 500-foot setback
Right.
from those establishments that have an alcohol license. And then the separation between each dispensary or marijuana usage facility. Cause those are recommendations from our staff for Warrensburg specifically.
So, I'm just curious, cause I don't know this thing, is, states that have approved recreational marijuana, is it still, are you still required to, you purchase it from a location, but you are required to take it back to your residence to participate in it, or is it, I can light it up on the street just like I light a cigarette up?
Depends where you are.
Depends on the state, depends on the city.
Okay.
In Vegas, it's in the middle of the street. But a few
Well,
years
not
ago, when I
supposed
was
to
in
be.
college, no,
Well,
I think it is legal.
No, it's, in Vegas, you can't have it on the strip, you can't have it in the hotel rooms, but if it's not being enforced, you can do whatever you wanna do, and it's not being enforced, so, yeah. Because when you check into the hotel in Vegas, they have a very clear thing that you sign that states that you cannot participate in any marijuana while you're in the hotel.
So I was in Fort Collins, Colorado last summer, whether it was legal or not
Yeah.
enforced, it was
Well,
evident by smell that it was present publicly.
yeah.
Well, this is where we make this man's job a little harder.
You're a law enforcement, not lawmaking.
Yeah, it is a fact.
Okay, so moving forward, we're going to take a look in January at what that radius would look like. Any other feedback moving forward?
Any particular directive from council of what you're thinking you would like that to look like, or what maps we can bring back to show you?
I would like to see it,
Within
I would
100
like,
foot.
I mean, I'd like to see it at 250 feet, as far as what is it at 250 feet also. I don't know if it'll affect things that much. I mean.
And the ordinance then as written, the 500. Like
Right,
you
I
said.
wanna see it at
The
500.
250 feet and the 100 foot, and then you
Right.
want us to delineate between
Package.
licenses that allow sale by the drink,
Uh-huh.
and then also
package.
those licenses that
Right.
allow package sales. Okay.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Okay. All right, up next, we have an ordinance amending.
So, do we need to make the motion to table that till January, or is it just, we just move on and it kills that?
If there's lack of a motion to advance to second reading, it would just come back at your next
Okay.
meeting.
Okay. Next, we have an ordinance amending ordinance 5474 concerning the adopted fiscal year 19 annual budget for the general fund.
Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. Recently, the animal shelter replaced the interior kennel gates with some new and improved gates that, if you guys remember when you were there for tours, we had collars tied around them. It was chain link and it was really a mess. Once the inside ones were done, we made the decision to move to the outside doors and do the same process. And so we have a bid from Respect, the same company that did the last one through the Gordian Group of $14,915. It was not budgeted in this budget, so we are asking that you amend the budget to take it from the shelter donation account and put it into our budget so we can spend it. Happy to answer any questions that you might have about that.
Well, question is that, so that's the intent of the shelter donation fund?
It is my understanding that it is for things to improve the shelter.
Okay.
This is something that will not only improve the look, but it will also improve the safety of the animals. Right now, the dogs can shoot through the collars, and these are the outside doors, so they can potentially get out of the shelter. Something that did happen on the inside when we had the poor constructed gates there. So it improves safety for the animals, and I think that would be within the intention of the donation.
Okay.
And I don't know that we've had any significant donations that were donated for specific purposes at the animal shelter. A lot of times it's just people writing a check and donating money towards the support of the
Yeah.
shelter, and we put it all in the same fund.
Right, I know it used to, I guess that's that deposit forward account is what we're talking about.
That's something different. That's
Oh,
for,
okay.
that's for adoptions.
Okay.
This is just a general donation account, and most of the donations, as Harold mentioned, are not for something
Oh, okay.
specific.
Oh, I didn't realize we had two accounts, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that, so.
What's the current balance of that account?
Last time I checked, it was about 30,000, wasn't it? It's been a while since I looked.
I only was familiar with the deposit forward.
Yeah,
account.
Deposit Forward is a specific program that
Okay.
people can donate toward, and so it's designated for that.
Okay.
That helps pay for adoptions for people who can't afford them.
We need to,
I think we're waiting for an answer for
Yeah.
Casey's question.
Does that ballpark, does that sound about right?
Yeah, it was around 34,000, something like
That's fine.
that.
Okay.
I don't know the exact number.
I move to approve for second reading.
Jacobs?
Yes.
Lund?
Yes.
Watts?
Yes.
Johnston?
Yes.
This is an ordinance amending ordinance 5474 concerning the adopted fiscal year annual budget for the general fund. This is for adoption or rejection. Jacobs?
Yes.
Lund?
Yes.
Watts?
yes,
Johnston?
Yes. We have an ordinance authorizing the city manager and city clerk to execute a lease agreement between the city of Warrensburg and NRF LLC.
Madam Mayor, members of City Council, the city of Warrensburg owns some tillable acreage out next to the east sewer plant. Over the past years, previous years, that was used for sludge applications. Since we've changed our program with the re-drying beds, we've been leasing that ground out to be farmed, so we don't have to maintain the mowing and manage the property. Baldwin Cattle Company in previous years has had that lease. They own the property right adjacent to it. It was a good relationship for us because we knew how it was being managed. They since have sold that property, so we placed it back up, advertised for lease again. The two gentlemen that make up the NFR LLC are farmers out of the Concordia area that have purchased the old Baldwin property, and they submitted a lease amount of $170 per acre for each year. This time we had two applications, and there was the highest submittal. So staff would request the city council approve the lease. We have to answer any questions.
Move to pass that ordinance to second reading by title?
Jacobs?
Yes.
Lund?
Yes.
Watts?
yes,
Johnston?
Yes.
This is an ordinance authorizing the city manager and city clerk to execute a lease agreement between the city of Warrensburg and NRF LLC. This is for adoption or rejection. Jacobs?
Yes.
Lund?
Yes.
Watts?
yes,
Johnston?
Yes. We have an ordinance amending portions of section 24-54 regarding sewer pretreatment discharge limits of the Code of Ordinances of the city of Warrensburg, Missouri.
Madam Mayor, members of the city council, we have to, every so often, update our requirements with our discharge, with our wastewater. And these are generally on your industrial pretreatment. Before the next permit cycle comes through, these were requirements for updates to our ordinance that need to be put in place so that they can issue permits in the future for industrial users. So So what you see before you is the new limits that they have had developed for the city of Warrensburg, and we'll have to place it in our ordinance so that it is enforceable.
Are these more stringent than what we had?
Actually, we've got a couple of them that have backed down a little bit, so,
Okay.
but the fact remained that we had not updated this for several years.
Right.
And so MDNR, in our last inspection, requested that we get this updated by ordinance.
Have we had any significant violations under the previous set of rules?
We have not. We've had, everything's been following along pretty good. We've, a few years ago, we were having issues with the copper.
Right.
We've done some visiting with MDNR and did some different analysis of the water hardness. And so that would help us get into compliance because they were using a statewide model number versus what we had for water hardness in this area.
Okay.
So once we did that study and submitted our findings to them, they allowed us to drop down. So we're really, right now, we're doing pretty good on, copper was really our only real issue we had. We continue to work on oils and grease and we've got a new compliance tech at the plant. His walking orders are basically to really go out and visit with our industrial.
Right, right. Hadn't had the camera anymore though to locate any sources.
Oh, well, we can, if we don't, we'll get a call on one. We generally, that's
Yeah.
a pretty quick way to find it.
Yeah, okay. Recommend said ordinance be passed second reading by title.
Jacobs?
Yes.
Lund?
Yes.
Watts?
Yes.
Johnston?
Yes.
This is an ordinance amending portions of section 2454 regarding sewer pretreatment discharge limits of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Warrensburg, Missouri. This is for adoption or rejection. Jacobs?
Yes.
Lund?
Yes.
Watts?
Yes.
Johnston?
Yes. We have an ordinance amending section 6-19 of Article 2 of Chapter 6 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Warrensburg, Missouri regarding roof covering replacement permits.
Well, a couple times this fall, we've discussed the topic of roof permits and how we, due to some hailstorms this summer, had a very high level of activity in that area. I was just looking at the numbers. We've done 529 re-roof permits from January to November of this year. That is 66% of all your permits in that same time. So it certainly has been overwhelming staff, both at the permit clerk level with the intake, as well as with your inspectors, and diverting other resources from other areas to cover inspections. And even with that, we've not been able to cover all of those, and so contractors have either had to wait for inspections, or in the case of weather, when there's just no way we can leave work uncovered due to weather, which we've had a lot of in November. But even prior to that, they take pictures and email those in, but those have to be processed and added to the electronic files and reviewed, and that takes additional time as well. So we try to work with them the best we can, but I think all sides would agree it has not been the greatest summer and fall for re-roof re-roof projects. So in looking at the bigger picture, staff has this evening put in front of you an ordinance stating that we would take this requirement out of our code. And so in the future, what we would require are permits for basically when the structure itself, the rafters, the framing, that has changed or is changing or has been damaged due to fire or some other reason. We would continue to look at those members, but not the average re-roof. So looking at where we are, we have at the moment a limited amount of staff, and allowing them to do life safety inspections on other projects within the city and allow our roofers to keep going. whether weather is coming or not, it would let them open up the roof and keep moving on that project in a timely manner. So that's the recommendation in front of you. I do have both our inspector and our building official here this evening. I'm sure you have technical questions, and they'll be happy to answer those.
I will say this is a change from what we had presented to council before. Before we were talking about basically once a contractor had experience with us and we had confidence and faith in the work they had done, that we wouldn't require them to have a regular inspection. We would just do it randomly, and any new contractor, we would still require that they be inspected until we had confidence with that. The workload, however, continued at a significant pace, and we still had concerns regarding, even in that scenario, what the weight would be to our permitting clerk. And so we were at a point where we're either gonna have to follow along with what other cities have done in this aspect and just not do the roof inspections, or we'd have to request council to add another position for permitting purposes that we could keep up with it. We don't wanna keep our contractors bogged down because we can't process them fast enough. So I just wanted to point out, this is a change from the previous recommendation of staff to council, mainly due to the workload that it's creating.
There was a program whereby we identified a core group of roofers.
Well, we discussed doing that. We never implemented that.
Okay, it was never implemented.
Correct.
Okay.
We were
Okay.
going to look at implementing that at the start of the year, and we would have brought that back to you. Instead, we're bringing this to you. So it was just discussed within staff and then here
Right.
at the study session.
Okay.
And we hadn't taken it to the ordinance level yet. We had discussed it with you to make sure you guys were fine with it, and then staff was gonna work on preparing the ordinance change.
Okay.
But during that time frame, the workload just became too much to where now we're recommending that, we're asking council to not require staff to do these inspections and permitting anymore.
So as long as they're not touching rafters, so if they're pulling, so if you pull the roof off and you find boards that are soggy and no good, those boards can be pulled off and new boards can be put back on and no permit's still required.
I believe that's true.
Yes,
Okay.
more of a replacement.
Right.
In your example, it's a little more than the typical replacement, but we don't get much beyond that, but that's fairly standard too. You
Right.
can see 2 or 3 little places that
Mhm.
have to be replaced.
Yeah, I know I replaced my roof in Florida, they found a couple spots that the wood was no good either, so we had to
Yeah.
pull the wood off too, so, yeah.
Right.
Counselor, how does that, I see that we've said that because we didn't look at it, basically it holds the city harmless. If a citizen were to say, well, the city didn't look at it, would there be any possible impact to us?
No,
Okay.
no. Drawing that line of what to inspect or what not to inspect would not expose the city to liability.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, in essence, what we're doing is we're removing a protection to our
Right.
citizens that we have been doing as a
Right.
service to our community. Now, if you have an issue with your contractor when they're put on the roof, it's gonna become a civil matter.
Exactly, yeah.
And the city is no longer involved in that process of inspecting to make sure everything is installed the way we believe it should be done according to code. Now, if you have a contractor that doesn't do it that way, the citizen is gonna have to go through the legal processes, through the civic process in order to deal with that situation.
Right. Okay.
The average numbers that you have brought forward, is that based on the last 4-year average? You know, the $5,000?
The revenue,
Yeah,
that was that was 2015, 16, and 17.
okay, so that's a
What I
normal
did there
year other
was
than
just
a
take-
hail year.
Right, no, your hail year this year, you are at 20,383 in revenue from just your re-roof permits, which is 0.8% of your total revenues. So 0.8% of your revenues reflects 66% of your permits.
But still not enough to cover an additional staff person even in a hail year.
No, and to truly be processing these as quickly, like the 1-day turnaround that roofers would like you to process them in, you're going to need 1.5. You need an inspector as well as a clerk to do the intake. We're getting 30 or 40 roof applications a day, which can take 1 to 2 days to get them all the way entered and issued.
I know the biggest issue that some of the roofers run into is, they wanna pull it off on Friday and put it back together on Saturday, and, you know, or work the weekend to be able to get stuff done, and obviously we don't have staff, we can't afford to have staff working the weekends.
We actually get a lot of those.
Right, so,
We get a lot
yeah,
of those.
it actually happened to one of my agents in my office, cause they were gonna pull a roof off on Friday, but the inspector couldn't get over there to do the inspection, so they had to delay till Monday to do the roof, so.
Brett, how often are you seeing them installing or doing something improper, you know, forgetting tar paper, you know, whatever?
Very rare.
Very rare?
You know, most of our companies are regular companies. It's just standard stuff. So it's very rare that you see a problem.
So you don't likely to see this to be an impact to our citizens?
I don't.
Okay.
We track, or we can, business licenses for roofers, is that?
No, it's not a step,
It's not a separate category.
It's not a separate discipline.
Okay.
It's just a general contractor's license. And
Okay.
so, while we have what we call roofers,
Yeah,
any general contractor can do a roof.
Right.
Well, any contractor, general or otherwise,
Right.
can do a roof,
right. As long as they hold a business license.
yes.
One of our biggest challenges too is to get out there at the right time,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if they call for a felt inspection for 10 o'clock and we're there at 10 and they're not ready, or decking, they don't have it stripped off yet. Now you've got an inspector that's invested the time to go halfway across town. He's standing there. Now he's gotta come back. He's got 2 more inspections already on the schedule. So it's just been a scheduling
Mhm.
nightmare a little bit.
I see this as the best alternative.
Yeah,
In my
so do I.
opinion. Move to pass that ordinance to second reading by title.
Jacobs?
Yes.
Lund?
Yes.
Watts?
Yes.
Johnston?
Yes.
This is an ordinance amending section 6-19 of Article 2 of Chapter 6 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Warrensburg, Missouri regarding roof covering replacement permits. Excuse me. This is for adoption or rejection. Jacobs?
Yes.
Lund?
Yes.
Watts?
Yes.
Johnston?
Yes. We have a resolution of the council of the city of Warrensburg accepting a proposal prepared by Mike Keith Insurance for property, liability, and cyber insurance for 2019.
Madam Mayor, members of the city council, what you have before you is the city's liability insurance renewal for 2019. The renewal has a 4.27% increase over last year's price. This is the first significant increase we've seen in 3 years. The price is above the budgeted amount for FY19. So, if the resolution is passed, we'll look at amending the budget for liability insurance in the fiscal year 6-month mark, along with other items that we may have, and hopefully we could amend it without an increase to the budget. Mike Keith is here tonight if you have any questions about anything within the policy or any specific changes.
I'm assuming some of these increases are created by some of our new technology we brought online.
There's a little bit of everything mixed in here. Some of it is just the budget growing. So the more money that we're spending out, the more insurance we need to cover some of the things we're doing. The most substantial increase came to the law enforcement, and I mean, you could say that's due to some of the things that have happened around in this area over the past few years, so.
Mike, is there any discount, you know, on the law enforcement liability side, is there any discount for dash cams or body cameras for police officers?
That's generally taken into consideration based on the application that we completed. We're getting, I believe, benefit of all those things. They're not specifically called out in rating procedure. Most of the rating for law enforcement is on a number of certified law enforcement people, full-time, part-time. That's the calculation we're getting the discounts, for having, a good operation and basically, very few claims in law enforcement. If we were getting major activity, we'd be looking at increases in premium, which we're not.
Move to approve. It's a
Yep.
resolution.
You go
Move.
ahead.
Do we need to move to approve? I move to approve.
Jacobs? Lund?
Yes.
Watts?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes. Okay, we have discussion and possible action on KCP&L Renewable Energy Rebate Program and an update from the December 6th Sustainability Task Force.
So last meeting, we had discussed this, we plan to have a task force meeting on December 6th, which did occur, so I guess I'll let, Councilmember Lund and Watts lead out and report on that, and I'll provide any additional feedback that's appropriate.
Go ahead.
So we met with, Mark Dawson, Drew, can't remember his last name, he is their, guru for sustainable energy. Had a great discussion, I feel. We were able to ask them the pertinent questions, pertaining to the rebates that we currently have approved and our rights to exercise those rebates or let expire, as well as talk about possibilities of larger projects and what their timeline was on that, and based on the feedback that we received, I think the consensus at the meeting was to, due to the time constraints of the acting on the rebates, as well as following due process through the city at this point, that we elected to let those expire, which they do after 90 days. And then we can continue exploring ideas, but not interested in moving forward with one of those projects at the moment.
One of the other things that was discussed, Harold asked if there had been a wind study in our particular geographic location, and how that might impact the solar rebates, if in fact we might qualify for a wind project. There was not an answer. KCP&L wasn't aware that a wind study had been done for our particular geographic area. They were going to check into that, as I recall. And the meeting closed with a motion to, according to the resolution that the task force was formed under, we are to recommend to the city manager and the city council actions. So there was a motion passed to ask the city manager and staff to move forward with a community solar project in conjunction with partners, and those partners being the base, university, and city of Warrensburg. And that pretty well highlights the meeting of December 6th.
I would agree. We also discussed some concerns regarding the consultant that had been assisting us through this
Yeah.
process. And basically, I think came to consensus that they weren't the appropriate consultant to continue helping us moving forward. But yeah, I think Councilmember Lund and Watts summed up the meeting pretty well. So at this point, staff would need direction from council officially whether or not you wanted us to allow these rebates to sunset, or whether you want us to prepare the necessary documentation KCP&L requires. make sure those rebates are still eligible on the table or not, because if we were to do that, we would need to do that at your next council meeting.
I move to take no action on the rebates, which will allow them to automatically expire.
Jacobs,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Watts.
Yes.
Johnston.
Yes.
Do we need a motion then requesting that city manager and city staff pursue that community solar project? Or is that something that's
You can if you like, I mean.
I just
think
keep
the
those
staff
options
has that
open.
directive now.
just the directions all
And,
city?
And we will continue to have those conversations in those meetings to see
Okay.
and explore if there are opportunities that are mutually beneficial to all parties.
Okay.
And that would include conversations with KCP&L regarding their help and assistance in that partnership.
Yeah, it's worth noting that KCP&L, unbeknownst to me anyway, that KCP&L provides the same service that we were relying on MC Power to provide to us as far as the construction of community solar, large-scale, small-scale projects. They have that construction wing, if you will, in-house. So they'll be able to provide that expertise as well as we proceed, if we proceed.
All right, well, thank you for giving an update on that. Next, we have appearances to the council not listed on the agenda. Nothing on there. Okay, for mayoral appointments, I just have one at this time, and it is for the park board, and it is Jill Wilson.
What about J. Ravel Whitaker?
Oh, and the reappointments, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was just thinking the new ones.
Jay, and then we've got Jane Kiger and Billy Winter.
Yep.
So,
So, and just so that everybody saw in the application, I thought that was neat. Jane Kiger is actually a high school student who wants to be ex officio on diversity and inclusion, not task force, commission.
commission.
So I thought that was great.
So
Okay.
are we appointing her to be an ex officio?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep. I don't think we shouldn't have any age restrictions on a
There-
inclusive task force, I'd assume.
There's one ex officio member of that task force is reserved to be a high school student.
Perfect.
There's you.
I like it. Okay.
I move to approve.
Jacobs,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Watts.
Yes.
Johnston.
Yes. Okay, next we have miscellaneous matters from the mayor and or city council. I had one. Have we established yet who will be going to ICSE in Dallas?
Yes, I was under the assumption that Councilmember Jacobs was attending that with me,
Perfect.
and we've proceeded with making arrangements for travel and lodging, et cetera.
Very good.
So,
Did you
I
get
think
your
we're good to go.
Did you get your registration?
I
that
did get that,
forwarded?
yes.
Anybody have anything else?
I'd like to announce we have city council finally begins tomorrow at 8 a.m. So we have 2 positions open. I think I'm looking at a couple of them, so you know where to come.
All right. Okay, and next we have the city manager's report.
I know a lot of it's outlined in my city manager report, but I did wanna publicly thank a lot of our staff. We've had a busy few weeks with a lot of community events and activities, et cetera, and a lot of our staff behind the scenes have been putting in some pretty major hours trying to get everything done. So I wanted to thank especially our Public Works Department, and our Fire Department, and our Police Department for all the efforts they have done in helping not only clear snow off of snow events, but make sure parades run smoothly, helping with the mayor's Christmas tree decorating, which was the first time we have done that. And we look forward to doing that in future years as well. But a lot of times our staff goes unthanked for a lot of the work they do, and I just want to publicly say thank you to them for the work they do and helping our community look its best and make sure that we have good family-friendly events publicly for for our community to participate in, especially during these times of the year when it's cold and nobody wants to be outside. So, I do appreciate, their work. This will be our last council meeting for the year. This is our only one for this month, so we will meet again on January 14th. And in the meantime, I'll be sending out some information to council as we'll be gearing up to do evaluations of myself and the city clerk, as well as we'll be gearing up to do actually performance evaluations across the entire organization as we implement the new processes. So I don't believe I have anything else right now. But
Our luncheon.
oh yes, the 17th. We
Oh,
have
yeah.
our employee luncheon, our holiday luncheon.
Yes,
So
we
we
do.
invite all the council to put that on their calendar, as we will also be recognizing years of service for several of our employees that meet anniversary dates for that as well. It'll be at the ABC building on the 17th from 11 to 1, correct?
11:30. 11:30.
30 to 1?
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, Matthew?
On the 7th, the city paid down the staff's PTO balance. This is the third time we've done that, and it keeps shrinking the amount that we're paying out, which is good and it's stabilizing. We paid out about $8,000 less than we did last year, so hopefully that number kinda continues to stabilize. It was right on the amount we budgeted, so that was a good thing as well. The revenues for the month of November were up about 27%. We saw some big jumps. Sales tax was up 27%. Use tax was up 50% over this time last year as well. Use tax is kinda, you never know what you're gonna get there, but still we're seeing some good numbers coming in this year.
Hmm.
Okay,
That's it.
thank you. Barb?
I would just highlight in the report that, the building division did receive their ISO rating. That was an evaluation they do every 5 years. And this year we improved in our residential went from a class 5 to a class 4. And then commercial stayed, the same at a class 4. So anyway, it is an improvement, and, a lot of that is policies and implementation and adopting the new building codes.
I will point out that, just so the public doesn't get confused, because we talk about ISO rating quite a bit. We have 2 ISO ratings. We have one for Barb's department, we have one for the fire department. The fire department is one that usually gets a lot of attention, because that's what a lot of your insurance rates will be tied to. But this one is important as well, and staff does a good job of making sure we're doing things the right way, so we get the best ISO rating we can in their area as well.
Actually, them getting a good rating helps us get good. No, I'm paying you.
I remember somebody saying we were gonna get a 1 year soon, so.
I'm gonna call them probably in April or May for a re-eval. That'll be right at 2 years, and that's about what they recommended from, and we should be ready.
Very good. Slim?
Don't have too much tonight. Councilman Jacobs could attest to this pothole season.
Yep.
Crews finally got the weather break a little bit enough where we can get out and treat some today. With the freeze thaw cycles that we've been having, the weather that we've been having, it's been difficult to manage it, but staff is working to address those. So if you have one that comes to your attention, please let me know. We try to get out and take care of them all in a timely fashion. We're just a little behind due to the weather conditions, so.
Hopefully it doesn't cost you $150 to find it, though. Mine cost me $150 to find it. I was gonna bring the bill for you tonight, but I figured I'd take care of it, so.
We just pass it on to Matthew. He
Yeah.
just don't get your stuff. You may say that's the hazard of.
Yeah, yeah.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Gary? Marcy?
Real quickly, at the, August 23rd joint meeting with council and WCVB, one of the items we discussed was the strategic plan. I just kinda wanted to update you where we are on that. We had our last session with Key Solutions. They facilitated all of the sessions that we had. We had three sessions, one in October, November, and discussion, a lot of positive ideas, great insight from all the board members that were able to come. We had a high number of, board members that attended. And so we hope to put all those pieces together, and at the January WCVB meeting, they'll be, approving the strategic plan for implementation. So we're excited. We'll be able to, provide that in your January 14th council meeting package.
Very good. Thank you. Danielle?
Nothing additional.
Okay. Joe? Great.
Nothing additional?
I won't break the streak.
All right. Doug, Brian, Casey?
Yeah, I think it's probably important for the public to know that you're starting to see cameras and new traffic signal work that is more apparent than just digging holes. And that's progress as promised when the public passed that bond issue. So, yeah, they're making great strides with that. The contractor is.
I'm glad you brought that up. I did forget to mention the fact that we are working on getting the poles installed, started out with Ridgey intersection, today. You'll notice on most of all the poles around, it looks like a upside down square or triangle, or what do you wanna call it?
Yeah.
But, on there, we received 2 phone calls today asking if those were, speed detectors.
Did you say yes?
We were explaining to the public that those are actually the radar detection for, versus having the loop detection that
Right.
everybody's used to.
Right.
So if anybody asks you what those monstrosities are, it's on top of the pole itself. That's what the units are, and they are the radar detection.
Just don't need to tell them it's radar detection is not for speed, but we'll just say radar detection.
Yeah.
Make
Yeah,
your
that's
job a
true.
little easier, see?
We have Tom Carrick for that.
Maybe if they slow down, they won't have blowouts.
Right.
I was not driving.
I just wanted to give a final thank you. There have been so many events going on, and it's always a very big collaboration between WCVB, Main Street, the Chamber, the city, and I know sometimes it's such a collaboration that you don't really know who to go to for different things, and that's really how it should be. That's a really neat thing, and the events that have been put on lately have been really, really good events for Warrensburg. Kind of every season you think, this is my favorite time to live in Warrensburg, and then the next season comes by and you kind of think it again. So thank you to everybody who worked hard on that. On Dickens Christmas, you couldn't come into City Hall without seeing a lot of the directors and city staff there, so really appreciate all of that. Okay, anything else? All right, thank you, have a good Christmas.
I forgot that recipe, I'll get that to you.
I meant to email you that.
I've got it, I finally put it on the computer, so I'll send it to you tomorrow.
Did they ever say who won?
Oh, check with Catherine.
Oh, it was
It was
so
prime
good.
rib
Yeah.
soup,
Well,
yeah.
if you